When combine harvesters first appeared in this district a few years after the end of the Second World War, they all arrived with just a straight table, since they originated out of the United States, where swathing was not considered as being necessary in which to harvest a crop. Because of our northern latitude, most of our cereal crops will not ripen quickly nor evenly, which can be attributed to the reduction of heat units during the growing season. Not to mention that any weeds still growing at the time of harvest will cause even more problems because of the moisture contained within them. Hence the use of a swather, which takes care of both of these issues at once, as the cut crop will ripen in about a week and the weeds will die without transmitting any excess moisture into the crop itself. In this video, I decided to present my John Deere 6620 Titan combine in what I felt was its natural element, namely harvesting with a straight cut header, as it probably did double the acres in this format on my farm as opposed to using the pickup table that it came with. When I purchased this machine new in July of 1983, I saw no reason at that point in time to reflect on any other concept. But the anticipation of change was just around the corner. In this photograph, taken in 1950, my father, along with his two brothers, were quite pleased with the mutual purchase of their Case pull-type combine, a newly acquired item on their family farm, where the previous method of harvesting for the past 30-some years was with multiple grain binders, a thrashing machine, and a crew of a dozen men. Even by 1960, my wife's grandfather, with his John Deere 55 Highboy, would often resort to the use of a straight table, as he found it to be many times more efficient than picking up a swath, as it meant one less operation over the field, when time was at a premium and every day counted before the onset of winter. But the simple fact remained: here on the Canadian prairies, in order to get a crop into the bin as quickly as possible, and with the highest quality, it required the use of either pull-type or self-propelled swathers, commonly called windrowers on the American side of the border. It did not take long, and most major farm equipment manufacturers, as well as short-line companies, produced a multitude of these machines that became the ultimate solution. The small valley, as seen in these video clips, borders on the western edge of some of the land that I farmed, and as I would work my land throughout the year, I was provided with a panoramic view of the winding creek that flowed through it. The various tributaries that drained into this valley collected runoff from a very large watershed in this part of the region, and it would eventually run into the Qu'Appelle Valley River system that stretches for over 2/3 across the width of this province. In theory, any snow melting in the springtime, right where I am combining, will in due course flow into the Assiniboine River, where it will proceed eastward to join with the Red River at Winnipeg, Manitoba. The merits of a straight-cut table became most evident in August of 1979 after a summer of sparse rainfall accompanied by excess heat. The crop which resulted under these conditions was certainly a disappointment, as I had just purchased a John Deere 4400 self-propelled combine in April and was indeed looking forward to putting a bumper crop through my newest possession. As the prospects of a short crop was most obvious, I seriously contemplated searching for a straight table to mount on my 4400. But whenever I happened to mention these thoughts to any of my farming neighbors, I was given strict advice to spend my money on a much bigger swather, rather than wasting good money on a straight table. I was duly informed that straight tables were dinosaurs, referred to often as a totally useless piece of junk. And if I continued with this insanity, I was in danger of being committed to the nearest mental institute for serious evaluation. Naturally, I immediately shelved this idea for the time being, as I wanted to stay on good terms with all of my friends and colleagues. By the summer of 1984, with a chance of a repeat of 1979 in the ensuing weeks to come, the decision was finally made to find a straight header, no matter what. My only recourse was to visit my local John Deere dealer, where I had bought my 6620, and see if he could find what I needed. He told me in no uncertain terms that straight tables did not exist in this part of the province. But if I ordered one today, he could have it here by next year this time. I asked him to phone around and make inquiries to see if there's any 22 or 24-foot units sitting new on another dealer's lot in the area. He quickly discovered that there was none to be had of that size anywhere in the three prairie provinces. But he did track down a 20-foot in northern Alberta, which was still available. I really was not struck on one this small, but it was better than nothing. We together hammered out a reasonable deal, and in a matter of a couple of days he had it delivered to my farm. Needless to say, the day it arrived, the main topic of conversation in the coffee shop centered on the fact that dear old Don had completely lost his marbles. It may only be seen for a moment, but in the background is my farm with its machine sheds and grain bins, and is where I still reside today. Long before the days of cell phones, there really was no proper way of communicating between a combine operator and the grain truck driver, other than a bunch of hand signals which solved nothing, but did create hard feelings and short tempers. When CB radios became a fad in the early 1970s, I realized the potential of what they were capable of achieving, and starting in 1977, I invested in a base radio for our family home, as well as then installing a mobile radio in every piece of equipment that entered our yard. Here you can easily see that my combine has an antenna attached to the extension of the hopper, and another radio antenna is mounted to the roof of the grain truck. I will agree that at times their static interference could be most frustrating, but probably the worst irritation was having to listen to someone's babbling from 500 miles away and nothing could be done about it, other than shutting it off. But that just defeated its entire purpose. We were fortunate that most of our farmland was situated not too far from the base, and at the same time, we could always expect good reception whenever the combine and the grain truck were in the same vicinity. In my opinion, the advantages outweighed all the negative problems associated with these simple two-way devices. I viewed the CB radio as a tool, not a toy, and they certainly made a huge difference when trying to keep in constant contact with the other person, especially when a problem arose that had to be dealt with immediately. It may be difficult to detect at the extreme distance that is involved, but the locomotives on the horizon are gradually descending into the same valley which I had referred to in my earlier remarks. The earthen-filled trestle that spans this rift in the land lies before them, and their speed must be reduced due to the shifting and the settling of the ground beneath this structure. Safety is their prime concern, and until the last railway car has crossed over, the engineer will maintain his slow, methodical speed. For more information on this topic, you may click on my website entitled Westward Bound Canadian Pacific Grain Train, or just click on the link in the introduction to this YouTube video. It only requires a quick call on the CB radio, and Girl Friday, in this case Mrs. Dear Dawn, is coming across the field with the truck to pick up a second load of 165 bushels. We never once thought about unloading on the go, simply because the rolling terrain of most of my farmland would prove difficult to navigate, especially with a truck that is already half full. I was also aware of the fact that my wife was not comfortable maneuvering the truck at any speed in such close proximity to the edge of the straight table, so I felt that the few minutes that we lost was irrelevant. By the same token, I made it a point that the truck would always face into the prevailing wind while unloading, as I did not want any dust or chaff to land anywhere near the air vents on the hood or cause any grief and misery to the engine air intake or radiator. All things taken into account, I still considered myself extremely lucky that I had a truck driver that I could count on to efficiently handle this 3-ton grain truck under all other conditions, and accomplish this with the utmost care and caution. Another 330 bushels of Canadian hard red spring wheat on its way to the grain bins in our yard. And standing there that day back by the auger, watching the grain being unloaded, was my 88-year-old father who had been involved with every harvest on this farm since the age of 15. Looking back in time, I really have no regrets on being a bit of a maverick in trying something different in the world of agriculture that was totally unorthodox. In this instance, you can easily say that my ideas were going against the grain, with no pun intended. I kept my swather right up until I retired from farming, as it was used for almost all of my durum and barley crops, as well as any oil seeds. But for spring wheat, though, it was only there as a backup, never as the main preference. It no doubt proved its worth in 1988, when Western Canada went down in the record books for suffering under the worst drought conditions ever experienced. Without too much difficulty, my straight table was able to harvest my short-stunted crop with very little header loss, while all around me my neighbors were trying their best to salvage what they could with a swath that was unmanageable at best and prohibitive at worst. It was the year that preconceived notions lost the battle to the cold, hard facts of reality. At the end of a long day in the harvest field, I could glance out the windows of my cab and survey before me another bountiful crop. At the same time, I could also be grateful for the reliable performance and hard-working efforts of this machinery from the Harvest Works factory located in East Moline, Illinois. With the possibility of maybe 1 or 2 more truckloads of grain destined for the bins in the background, I will then decide to call it quits and look forward to what another day will bring. And like I did the entire time that I owned this Titan, it too will be driven home tonight and parked in its shed. For not once in 12 harvest seasons did it spend a single night outside under the moon and the stars. I thank you for watching.